All right, EntreArchitect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern or thereabouts, which means it's time for the EntreArchitect Context and Clarity live conversation for Thursday, October 27th, 2022. Thanks for joining us today. As you get here, as always, say hi. Let us know that you're here and let us know where here is for you. Where are you joining this conversation from? If we've never met before, my name is Jeff. I'm in Indianapolis. I come here every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for one reason, so that we can find clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect. Doesn't matter if you're the employee of a firm or you own your own firm. Maybe you've circled a date on the calendar. You said 2022 is my year. Maybe it's December 31st of 2022 is your day and time, and you're on the runway to starting your own thing. Or maybe you have owned your own firm for a year or 9 years or 27 years or somewhere in between. And you're starting to rethink or reimagine what that firm could or maybe even should be. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, they all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture, and they're all the need to know topics for the success of entrepreneur architects just like you. So thanks for joining us today. As always, as usual, I should say, for Context and Clarity Live, I am joined by Katharine MacPhail. Hi, Katharine.
Hi, Jeff. How are you doing?
I am well. Welcome back.
Thank you. It was good to have a week off, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm really excited about the conference next week. And I just bought myself a new laptop bag
Oh,
for
wow.
yeah. I feel like
Awesome.
I've been in business 27 years, and I was wondering just when you said that, how many laptop bags have I bought in that time?
Mm.
Maybe at least 25. But I have a new one for Austin, Texas, so
Excellent.
I'm ready. Yep.
Very good. Does it have a big belt buckle on it or anything?
I can't 100% remember what it looks like, but I think it has you'll see it next week. It
I will
has
see it.
two long things that hang down, but they're not quite tassels. So it's too bad because I
Okay.
like fringe and tassels, but you can't have everything.
Well, you can't. But you go to Texas, there seems like there ought to be fringe and
I know,
fringe and
right?
tassel
I
and
forgot I was
big
going.
belt
Yeah.
buckles and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, but anyway.
Well,
Anyway, that's
congratulations.
yes, thank you, thank you. But mostly I'm excited to go to this trip, and I'm just excited enough to be buying my new bag. It's like a
That is
yearly
great.
thing.
I made a
Yeah.
purchase yesterday as well, or late
Was it
last
your
night.
Pelican or whatever it's supposed to be?
It was indeed.
Did you?
I
Oh,
did indeed.
boy.
Yep,
Yep.
we gotta get some gear to Austin. So the Pelican case should be here tomorrow.
You'll get your Swiffer van soon.
Yes.
What is it? It's not Swiffer, is it?
Well, I don't
Sprinter.
even know.
Sprinter.
Sprinter. There you go. Yeah. Oh,
Mm,
Swiffer is a better name. It's a better
I
name.
think
We'll
so.
build the studio out by next week. Well, welcome back. Glad you had a good week off. Hope you enjoyed Fiddle Camp and
I did.
you came back for a really good conversation, really good topic today, I think. So I'm looking forward to jumping into this momentarily. But I'm looking out there in the audience. I'd like to say hi to everybody. Glad that you're here. Chris Novelli is out there. He's the first on the screen, first in the room from Massachusetts. Not the first in the the first. No, he's not the first in the room from Massachusetts. He's the second
Nope.
in the room from Massachusetts.
Well, I don't count, I guess.
Well, yeah, there's that technicality, but Chris is the winner of today's John Kinney Memorial Crocheted Bathtub Award. That's the award that goes out to the first person to join our conversation here. So congrats on that, Chris. And Janine, we see you out there from Arizona, and Christian in Ithaca, New York. Scott says it's a postcard day on the Bay. Excellent. Thanks for joining us from San Francisco and LinkedIn today, Scott. Glad you're here. Jean's in Houston. Welcome back. Martin Knowles. Hello. Welcome. Glad you're joining us from Vancouver, BC, Canada. All right. How much snow do you have in Vancouver already? Any?
They don't have snow in Vancouver, Jeff.
No? Too
No,
close
my
to the
husband's
coast?
yeah, it's more like
Yes.
Seattle, I think. My husband's from Vancouver,
Okay.
and he used to think the snow was gonna melt here, and he wouldn't shovel it. I say, "It's not gonna melt." Um, and it didn't. I was right because I grew up here, and
Yeah.
in Vancouver, it seems to always melt. No shoveling needed.
Yeah. A little more moderate there. Well, Martin, we're glad that you're joining us from Vancouver today. Kurt is joining us from Flint, Michigan, and he is leading the the Twitch fan club over there. Glad you're with us today, Kurt. And Jean says she's also excited for next week. Christian says he's got a lot of stuff to finish up before going to Austin. I feel that. I totally feel that. Um, I guess that is. I guess that's the thing about deadlines and looking forward to going places. Martin says no snow, lots of rain. He said they get snow maybe once or twice a year for a couple of days. All right, and Chris says that's the recipe for an icy driveway. It certainly
Don't I
is.
know it? Yeah.
It certainly is. We already had snow in Indianapolis this year. Believe it
No
or not,
way.
we did.
You did? When? Yesterday?
October 18th, we had snow,
Wow.
which was startling. So,
Yeah, that is startling. Well, I was going to ask Chris if he's in his pool today because it's pretty warm.
oh, nice. Congratulations, Massachusetts. Happy fall to you.
Congratulations. Yeah, I don't know if that's really what's in order.
Maybe not.
Hmm.
Yoko's joining us from Alexandria. She's listening in for a bit while she works. Thanks for saying hi. Glad you're here. And anybody else that's out there, as this is being pushed out to all of the networks, we're glad to have you here. It's great to have you here. So even if you're just listening in or if you're multitasking, that's okay. At least say, hey, I'm here. I'm here for the conversation because we've got a great guest today. We have a great topic today, an important topic today. And I'm looking forward to jumping into this conversation. Yes, Scott says there was snow. Scott was actually here in Indianapolis. It snowed the day that he and I met for coffee. So, yeah, we have witnesses.
Wow. That's
All right.
unbelievable. That's too early.
It's very early. Yeah, I don't know what that means for this winter, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe that's the only snow we'll get this winter.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it means. That's your only snow.
Yeah, pretty positive. I'm just going to throw the snowblower away.
Yeah.
So our guest today, well, I'm going to introduce our guest here really quickly, but our guest today has already gotten rid of their snow removal equipment. There's some backstory to that. You have to listen to the EntreArchitect podcast to hear that conversation. But I think our guest is anti-snow. So we'll find out here. They're back there in the green room. All of those green M&Ms that we left in the green room may be gone by now. If it were me, they'd be gone by now. So
yeah, she's been there long enough.
Yep, probably time to bring her out. So let me make a little introduction here. Our guest today is a leader, certainly a project manager and an architect. She's a senior associate and leader of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives at Co-Architects, and also one of our speakers for the upcoming EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting. So Antoinette Bunkley, welcome to Context and Clarity Live.
Jeff and Katharine, thank you for having me. And yes, I'm very adverse to snow. Katharine, I first want to say, if you got a new laptop bag, can you pick me up one and come into Austin and just bring it with you? Because I certainly need one.
I will do that. There's a slim, if you have to have it by, it has to be black and want tassels by Sunday. Can't get that. But I'll get you some other one.
Great.
Yeah, your deadline limits your options, I guess.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you again both for having me. I'm happy to be on this today.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you here. All week, so the way that we do the way that we shape context and clarity, I guess, is that we have our guest for Context and Clarity Live, which obviously is you, Antoinette, and for everybody out there, hey, it's Antoinette. She's our guest for today. And we take that theme, the theme that we're going to talk about with our guest, and we shape our entire week around that. So we have a week of conversations on the topic. And I have said a number of times that although Context and Clarity is not the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion show, there are certainly those out there which are fantastic, and everybody should go check those out. This is a topic that we could cover as much as we could fit in, or as much as we wanted to, or some version of that. And not only would it be fine, but really it wouldn't be enough, because I think that's the importance of what we're talking about here today. As I thought about the topic leading up to this week, I was thinking about, how do we talk about this? in a different way, because we've touched on justice, equity. I don't want to get in trouble with Disney, so justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion a few times with several guests. And so how do we do it differently this week? So my approach for this week was looking at how do we actually activate what we're talking about here. And this is partially inspired by your conversation with Mark R. LePage on the EntreArchitect podcast. So for those of you who haven't listened to that episode, I want to say 596, but that could be totally off. Right about a year ago, I think. Go over to entrearchitect.com/podcast and or anywhere that you listen to podcasts and find that conversation between Antoinette and Mark. It's fantastic. But as we were talking backstage, one of the things that really impressed me about what's going on at Co-Architects is that not only do you have, in-house initiatives, diversity and inclusion types of in-house initiatives, but from what I can tell, you're actually activating, and as you say in that conversation, the justice and the equity pieces of that in the firm, in the community, in your work with your clients and things like that. And so that to me really stood out. That to me was really inspiring. And so I really wanted to spend this week thinking about, what are some things that I learned growing up, sayings, stereotypes that, and the reason I picked this one was I found myself in class a couple of weeks ago starting to say something. I'm trying to be more conscious about those types of things, starting to say something coming out of my mouth. My brain said, you know what? I don't even know where that came from or what it means, but I'm pretty sure that came from a pretty dark place, from a place that's hurtful to somebody, et cetera.
Am I allowed to ask what it was? Probably not.
I don't even remember what it was.
No,
But it was,
I'm just gonna have
it was
to
one of those
imagine.
cliches that we use,
Yeah.
right? One of those sayings that has been part of the American dialect, I suppose.
Yeah, there's lots of them.
And my brain just said, maybe pick something different. So I had to apologize and say, I'm going to say this a different way,
Yep.
But to me, that was a great starting point for this week in finding some way to really personalize and activate these discussions about justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. So what made me curious about what you're doing in your work is, thinking about the business case for these initiatives. Of course, we can do these in-house, but that's not what you're doing them in-house, but you're pushing them, right? You're applying in different areas and ways. At the same time, I know that there are people that will say, well, we should concentrate on architecture. We should concentrate on building science, on, construction, whatever, right? The technical aspects. And you do that, obviously, in your work. But I am more curious about your work in these initiatives at Co and beyond, and why you put so much effort, the royal you, right? Everybody at Co, not just Antoinette, obviously, but why you put so much effort, so much time, devote so many resources to things that aren't necessarily projects, that aren't necessarily, they probably have an effect on your culture and hiring and all those things, but it's outside of what we would call architecture. It's outside of this thing that we design that gets built. So I'm curious where this starts at Co-Architects.
Oh, well, Jeff, it originally started with just the whole, the death of George Floyd. But when the task force was formed, it was really wanting to be about change, and not just change in architecture, because it's so quick to just focus on a narrow focus. But we wanted to broaden our focus and make it more about change within our community, not just locally, but nationally as well. And so we set up these initiatives that says, okay, yes, we're going to have some initiatives that are directed towards architecture, our A&E community. And then we're going to have some initiatives that are impact within our company, that affects our company and our community and our clients. And it just went from there. And, Co is very fortunate. We're fortunate. We're about 160, 155 size firm. So we've dedicated, or we've had a significant amount of resources that are willing to work on the task force and to keep these initiatives live and going. And it takes a commitment. And
Sure.
so we're very fortunate that people are committed to keeping the change going, keeping the conversation going. That's part of it. Not just doing the initiatives, but we also focus on continuing the conversation around racism, around what's going on, current events, and those sort of things. So it's been a challenge, but we keep up with the challenge.
Is this something that every firm, right? And everybody's different, and every firm is different, and their sizes, and
Mhm.
different clients and project types, et cetera. But is what and I guess we're going to have to step back and actually describe what Co-Architects is doing. But
Mhm.
is what you're doing something that every firm should be doing?
Yes, if you want to create change, then yes, it's something that every firm should be doing. It doesn't have to be on the scale that Co is doing it at. I believe we're on a much larger scale because, again, of the interest in the change. But it's something that every firm should at least take one initiative and help to go about creating change. And it can only be within the A&E community, especially if you're a small firm, because you're up against challenges being a small firm, right? So that's so much different than the much larger firm that has over 3,000 employees, and then that becomes more corporate. I've
Right.
sat on a couple of panels that talked when we talked about doing JEDI, where we had a small, medium, and large firm, and we talked about the differences between each size firm and the challenges that each firm face. And then we turned around and we had the same conversation a year later, right? And it was how was it progressing? Was it still alive? And for the most part, in each firm, it was still alive. There were some wins, there were some losses, but it's still happening. And I think, again, that's something every firm, not just an architecture firm, but any firm who wants to create change within the community or within the country, or should do.
Well,
So, sorry, go ahead.
do you mind if I just ask Jeff? Because we were talking this morning about the subject, and we were wondering if there's just one of us in our company, how do we address this issue? Do we? I mean, we can't really do much to increase diversity in our own companies but we could hire minority owned businesses to do different things, and we could
Mhm.
go out into the community somehow. But what advice would you give us? Those of
Right.
us,
That or one person or a couple of people.
yeah.
Yeah, I thought about this, and you know, I think it's important for it to start in the community. And in regard, it can be within the schools itself, especially with minority. If you want to make a change with Black and minority um, students, you have to start early. And being able to go out into your community and identify with a school that may have a high population, to expose them to architecture. Because most Black and minority architects, like myself, were first generation. And, I wasn't exposed to it until I was in high school. Um, and now we're starting much earlier. And so I think if you're like one person, just reach out to the community, go to a school and see how you can get involved. And by that, maybe you go and you speak on a day in the life of an architect. And that's all you have to do. Doesn't take much time to do that. And it just starts there.
I'm writing this down so I can remember to do that later. So what are you thinking? Kindergarten, that young, or more like fourth grade?
More like fourth grade or higher, maybe sixth grade, and start there. I know Southern California National Organization of Minority Architects, NOMA, have what we call a pipeline. And they actually have a summer camp for students, I want to say from, is it seventh grade on up to even those in college, can come to this camp. And it's 3 days over on the weekends, and expose them to architecture. And they start as young as, like I said, about sixth or seventh grade.
Okay.
Now, to be clear, when you mentioned earlier that you weren't exposed to it until high school, you mean you weren't exposed? I guess I should ask. Do you mean that you weren't exposed to architecture as a profession until high school?
Yes. Well, what happened was what got me interested, and if you speak to other Black and minority architects, they say it's an experience that they had happen that got them interested. And for me, it was a trip. My family and I, siblings, my brothers, sisters, dad, aunts, uncle, we all went on this kind of road trip through the South, the Carolinas, Georgia, all the way down. We ended up in New Orleans for Mardi Gras, and we came back. And I noticed the different types of architecture, especially the homes and stuff like that. And that was really kind of fascinating to me, how different, just going from one state to another state, architecture was. In hindsight, my mom said I used to always draw on the windowsills in the house, which would drive her crazy. So I had some kind of interest in art and drawing. And when I took this trip and I came back, I went to my guidance counselor and kind of said, this is what happened. And so I went into, what was it? A drafting program. And at the time, I was the only female in there taking drafting. and it just snowballed from there.
Drafting isn't the most exciting part of architecture, I'm just going to say.
For some people, it
I'm
is.
surprised. Okay. Yeah, you're right. For some people. None of whom I know.
I remember, because the teacher at the time would just give us like a detail of a nut or bolts, and we had to draw those up.
Yep.
And bigger picture, zoom out. It still didn't prepare me for architecture school, though.
No. We had heard that anecdote that you gave to Mark about getting your brother's transcript sent in your place by mistake. And so this morning we were actually talking about all the 4 children. We were wondering whether you said they were all close in age, but were any of them twins, or were you very early, or were you all very late? And so we were wondering which way was it?
It was, we're all close in age. Right now, my brothers and I are this exact same age. And
okay. And you always have been, probably.
Yes, because I used to love for at least for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, we're all the same age. So their birthday happens next week. And so eventually they will become old. They will be a year older than me. But they are twins. I get it. So they are twins, identical twins. And then that's myself and then my sister. And she's 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day younger than I am.
Wow, okay. Can you imagine? Your mom had quite a couple years there, 3 years. Okay, so I'm sorry. Yeah, we were intrigued by that bit.
Yeah, well, and as I explained to Mark, and then she got even more creative, and she named us all A's, right? So my brothers are Angelo and Antonio. I'm Antoinette and Angela. And so Antonio and Antoinette, the last 4 letters are different. And so that's how my brother's transcripts end up going to the college that I wanted to go to.
Yeah.
And I had to sit out of architecture for a year because it was too late. So until I
Wow.
can apply. So that's the
That's too
story.
bad. Did he get your transcript? Did he get to go to some great program because he got your better transcript? That would have been
Yeah.
nice for him.
Yes, because I was straight A's and he
Yeah.
wasn't.
He probably, by default, tested out of classes that he had never passed, and you got held back, essentially. That's
Yeah.
I'll bet
That's
those are fun family reunions, honestly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
wow. Okay. All right. Thanks for clearing that up. We were
Yeah.
wondering.
Mhm.
Um, I love the idea of engaging, it's, going, going down to fourth grade and, with
Mhm.
kids.
Mhm.
I for any again, we're blurring some lines here because some of this information we're sharing because we've listened to the interview
Yeah. Yeah.
between Antoinette and Mark on the
Mhm.
EntreArchitect podcast. So if you haven't heard that, please go listen. You can just hit pause on this if you're watching the replay, but go
Mhm.
listen to that interview and you'll get some more of the inside jokes and things that we're talking about now. Um, but in terms of engaging with the community as a sort of a small starting point
Mhm.
that anybody can do. I love that.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if co-architects is the opposite end of the spectrum of that, but it's certainly
Mhm.
much further beyond that. So, what
Mhm.
could you give us, sort of in a nutshell? What are you doing at co-architects? That's a big question, I know.
In terms of justice, equity, diversity, and
Right.
inclusion,
What are the initiatives that you're focused on right now?
we actually have 7 initiatives, and in each initiative has call to actions associated with those, and each initiative has 2 co-leaders. So in the event that one cannot make a meeting, the co-leader
Got it.
will
Yeah.
do it. And then it also has, each initiative has a subcommittee associated with it. We try and keep the task force under 20 people, but yet a lot of people want to get involved. And so the subcommittees are another way for other staff and interested people can get involved and not just participate in the task force itself. So we have a budget that we establish each year, meaning we go to leadership and ask for money. And for our initiative, based on the goals and objectives we want to accomplish. Right now, we're working on our budget for 2023. And that is based on what each initiative would like to do and accomplish. And then we'll roll that up and present it to management for approval. So, and that's kind of it in a
Yeah.
nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's perfect. And so what I gather is that some of those initiatives are, going back to the way I framed it up earlier, is some of those initiatives are what I guess I would call maybe in-house initiatives. But
Yeah.
you're talking about um, the murder of George Floyd
Mm-hmm.
as a catalyst, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So obvious. Well, maybe it's not obvious. I'm guessing then that because of that some of these initiatives are absolutely out of house, right? They're focused on the community, as you said earlier.
Yes. Yes.
Um, how do you determine what you do beyond the walls of the firm, and then how do you justify that from a
Well,
business standpoint, I guess?
well, yes. Well, we justify it to management by again making the world a better place, not just the architectural world, but the world in general, a better place. And the one thing that is very important is leadership support. So we have very strong support from leadership. We haven't had any challenges in terms of wanting to go out into the community and do things for the good of the community. So I think that's the key, that leadership supports our reaching out above and beyond. Our budget is pretty realistic. We're not asking for millions and millions of dollars, but it is supported. One of the initiatives, and you were talking about going out into community, is initiative number 3, which is about awareness to action. And that really works around social justice and bringing awareness of not only local, but other issues that have to do with change. More recently, I don't know if you guys were aware what happened with the LA County City Council.
Yep.
It was in the news. So part of our Jedi is we talk about continuing the conversation. So the Jedi Task Force met, and we had a conversation about what was going on, and how we should address it within code, because acknowledging it is key. And then what is happening with Kanye West, right? And that issue. So we had a conversation, and we said, we talk about it. This is how we feel, and then we came up with, okay, we should at least make a statement or bring this to the attention of the office. So we did it twice. We posted it on Connect, and we sent out an office-wide email, and we just acknowledged that these two events took place, that you should be aware. It's not right. We need to be more kind to each other. And so, in general, it's just saying these aren't right. We have to stop doing this. We can be a part of the change. Just remember to be kind to each other. So that's one of the ways that we look at how we handle social awareness. In the past, it had to do with, especially during the George Floyd, safe ways to protest, if that's the case. Is that something you want to do? So it's just kind of how we continue the conversation about racism, because it's a difficult conversation to have and to continue. So, and yeah.
In your experience, and I know you're very active, obviously, in speaking and sitting on panels, and just you're immersed in this, and identified as an expert in the justice, equity, diversity, inclusion initiatives, especially in the AEC world. In your experience, is the level of effort and the level of resource allocation, I guess, and the all of everything that Co is doing, is that sort of, are you sort of cream of the crop? Are you at the top? Is this a growing trend in firms that obviously they may not be able to do what you're doing, but is it a growing trend that you see firms that are doing more and more, or is this a fire that we need to really light and stoke and get more firms doing more, or maybe both?
Yeah, and I've seen, especially last year or so, because I've not just in this industry, but other industries have reached out to me as well, that this is something that firms are wanting to do, and wanting to continue to do. Sometimes I put it this analogy: you go back to sleep after an event like that happens. For me, as I explained it to others, this time it woke me up, it got me out of bed, and I want to make sure I stay out of bed. Um, and so I keep that passion going for on a personal level. It's a huge time commitment. We're in architecture. We are all very, very busy.
Right.
Not enough resources. But again, I don't want this see this to go back to sleep until the next incident happens. And I think other firms are looking at it the same way, and giving their employees opportunities, educating them, and giving them a safe space for them to talk about racism and justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
So along those lines, Yoko wanted to know if a task force will be needed forever. If you think, I mean, forever is a long time, and for our lifetimes, let's say, or can a task force within a company be phased out at some point?
Well, personally, I think it would be needed forever, at least as long as I'm here at CO, and I hope it's to see it continue afterwards, because you have to keep the focus, the attention alive. You have to keep the awareness there. I think that's the only way we're going to continue to create change and acceptance of the differences in our country and in our world. If you keep it alive, if the task force goes away, then your initiatives, your focus goes away, as well as what you're doing in terms of those each initiative. So
that's true.
Yeah.
What do you say to firms, and I know they're out there, what do you say to people that that look at architecture, for whatever reason, look at the profession, and say, we the social justice, these things are outside of the purview of the profession. These things are outside of what we're focused on. We should focus on building science, on, detailing, et cetera, et cetera. What do you say to that? What do we even call that? That point of view. That's what I'll call it.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Because there's firms out there that do say that now, right? And will continue to say that.
And there are a lot of people who say that as well. So if you think about it, like, what kind of person says that?
Yeah.
That's what I think about.
There are people, you're not going to change everybody, and you're not going to change every firm. Hoping that firms that hear this, that have not had this awareness, will be aware. All you have to do is change one person, right? Or change one firm. And that's all it kind of takes. So to those, I would just say you have to look within yourself, right? You're either part of the problem, you're part of the solution to the problem.
Right.
There you go.
And those of us not taking it, this is what's been weighing on me a lot ever since George Floyd was murdered, is that I have been wanting to take action, and then have been taking the action I think I can, but I feel like I'm not doing enough. And then I know that people who aren't doing anything are really not doing anything. And so I'm not part of the solution yet. Sometimes I feel like, so yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes the solution doesn't have to be social, just social change, right? Part of the solution can be changing a Black or minority's life, in terms of, like I said, exposing them to architecture when they haven't been, or going out into community and working with them, not just to expose them to architecture, but to expose them to anything outside of their community, is being a part of doing something.
Okay.
Yeah, I like bringing it back to that. To me, it's sort of building it back to foundational things that we do this book club. So every month we read a book, which, by the way, everybody, tomorrow is book club discussion day. Profit First is the book for October. So we'll discuss that tomorrow on Context and Clarity. But back in January, I think it was, we read Atomic Habits. And the whole concept behind Atomic Habits is to break these things down to the atomic level. So it's, call it baby steps, or whatever version you want, but it's breaking it down into these I suppose easily accomplishable if that's even a word, easy to accomplish goals that lead to a bigger goal.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah. And speaking of that, in your book club, that in and itself can be one way of change. Look at a book that talks about racism or on racism or on Black architects, right? How many Black architects? I mean, do you know who Paul Revere Williams is?
No, but I'm very bad with names. I might have read about him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but taking 1 month, or I don't know how often you do your book club,
Once a
but
month.
take
Yep.
once a month and maybe 1 month, just focus on something that has to do with a Black or minority
That's a
issue.
good idea. That's a good idea. And we're announcing the new book tomorrow, Jeff. So
Yeah.
maybe we can get some recommendations from you, Antoinette,
So,
about
what
a good one.
do you recommend?
Oh, okay. I have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the
Okay.
spot there. Yeah.
You know,
Just pull out your list,
actually, I would suggest Paul R. Williams. Um, Anything, a book about him and his life. He has a very interesting life. He was a very well known, unknown Black architect that did over 3,000 buildings in the LA area in a time when it was unbelievable racism.
Mhm.
And yet he was a very successful architect. So maybe something along those lines would be great.
That sounds
Just,
good.
He
mhm.
was, if I'm not mistaken, he was celebrated with the gold medal by the AIA, maybe two. I'm thinking because I remember being at AI National and they, it was posthumous, wasn't it?
Yes, yes,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So it must have been right before the pandemic. So maybe 3 years ago or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah. And now in LA, they
Fascinating
do
story.
have Paul R. Williams Day. Well,
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
great.
yeah, yeah. So, it's, but to be honest with you, I hadn't heard of him until I came to Co.
Well,
Co actually, yeah, Co
yeah.
actually worked on two of his buildings
Hmm.
at UCLA.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I would
or
not have
one
known.
actually.
I think I had heard his name, but I would not have known much other than
Mhm.
sitting in the audience, that day where they awarded the, I think I have that right. I think it was the gold medal. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's a great point.
Mhm.
Yoko's follow up to her
Mhm.
question about shouldn't the awareness become part of the company culture? Isn't that the goal? I wonder how would you define the culture of co-architects?
Very diverse. And I was going to say, before even George Floyd happened, Co has been focused on diversity um, for years. I mean, we are. Let me get the percentages right. Right now, we're 55% women in the firm.
Oh,
How many firms can say that? We're about 54% minority. Is coming from like 28 different countries, speaking over 18 different languages. So we are an extremely diverse firm. How diversity and equity started was because although we were very diverse, there were few Blacks. And so it was me and another coworker that wanted to make that particular change. But Co in itself has always been a diverse culture company because different cultures brings add so much to the company. So not only do we just not focus we focus on celebrating and acknowledging all cultures, not just Black and minority, because we're such a diverse um, company. So it's already part of our culture, to be honest with you, but not many firms can say that.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. So when you have your seven initiatives, you have all of this impact that you're making through these initiatives, through all of this work. And I've said it over and over. You're devoting a lot of resources, a lot of time to this. How, getting back to the idea of the business case, and so for the EntreArchitect annual meeting next week, I believe. I had the title on the top of my head, but I believe the idea is you're going to talk about the business case for doing the right thing.
Correct.
How have you seen how have you seen the return of all of this effort that's being made back to Co? What's the impact on the business of co-architects that's coming from all of this work, all of these initiatives?
Well, a couple of them are, I'll give you one. I can give you several examples, but I'll give you one from one particular initiative where part of that is we wanted to work with HBCUs, and they're mostly located on the East Coast. And so before the pandemic, we decided we were going to pick several HBCUs that we were going to introduce code to and introduce those universities to code. One of them was Hampton University, and then there was Howard. So we went to their job fairs and toured their architecture school program, talked to their students, and let them know that we were interested. And we got some resumes. So I'm fast forwarding. We actually hired our first graduate out of Hampton University, who was also a first generation architect. And she started out on the East Coast. And when she started at Coast, she worked remotely because it was during the pandemic.
Sure.
And then eventually she relocated to California. So she's now here in our office. And we worked with her, and it's been quite a success story. So, and now we've identified more HBCUs. Matter of fact, I have a meeting this afternoon to talk about connecting with their internship programs and how we can do more to help them, because I on a financial side as well. So the return there is that, co-invested in us going out there, visiting the career fair, and in return we got a new employee. So
Well, and that's a big deal right now, right? With
yes.
the as hard as it is, and just about everybody in our community talks about the need to hire or to find the right help, some
Yes.
version of that. I mean,
Yes. Yes.
I think that's everywhere right now. So I think that's a big impact. Do
Mhm.
you have metrics set up where you're looking at it and saying, okay, we're going to do this, this is how we're going to judge the success of that?
Yes, we do. We do have metrics that we set up. Another one of our initiative has to do with the Southern Cal Number Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Challenge, and that's where they use metrics to judge the success of the challenge. And so we just recently completed that. I don't have the data yet, but yes, I do. We do have metrics that, because we had to do data gathering for that challenge in terms of minorities in positions, not just of all cultures, not just
Right.
Black or brown, and other areas that we had to track. So yes.
And you said that's through NOMA's Southern California chapter?
Yes, but
Okay.
I understand they are taking that now nationwide, that particular
Okay.
challenge. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Mark makes a good reminder in the comments. HBCU is historically Black colleges and universities.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mark.
I tried to figure that out. It took me not very long, but I did have to wonder what that was. He also mentions that there's a new Gable Media podcast called Hidden in Plain Sight about what did I say? Sharing stories of historic and currently practicing Black architects. So that's pretty cool. You can go get that at gablemedia.com.
There you go.
I did not know about that somehow.
Thank you, Mark.
And yeah, absolutely. And it probably anywhere that you consume podcasts,
Yes,
should
that's where you can find it.
should be available there. Absolutely.
Interesting.
So actually, 1 week from today, about this time, we'll be close to wrapping up the annual meeting. Believe it or not, I mean, this is flying by. So, understanding that, what is something, because a lot of the people that are joining us now or maybe watching the replay of this conversation right now will probably be joining us in Austin, which is a fantastic thing. If you don't know what we're talking about, what's going on in Austin? What's this annual meeting you're talking about? It's the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting. It's a conference, first ever live conference for small firm entrepreneur architects. Down in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now is the URL where you can go to find out about Antoinette, about her talk, all the other speakers, the sponsors, the venue, the schedule, all those things, smallfirmconference.com. So you still got a little bit of time to register and join us in Austin, Texas. For that. It starts November 1st, runs through November 3rd, which is a week from today. So what I love asking everybody that I've been talking to that's going to be presenting is, what is something that anybody in our audience, someone that's planning to go to the conference next week, what's something they can do to prepare, to be intentional about getting as much as they can out of your talk, what you're going to talk about, the ideas that you're going to present to us?
Well, hopefully they would take away one thing, because again, small firms don't have a lot of resource, don't have a lot of finance, but hopefully they can take away one thing that they could use to make a difference and a change. That's all I'm asking for. Just one thing. You can change one person's life, and it can be something that's not time consuming or financially burdening. So that's hopefully what I hope they would take away from it.
That's a really
Willingness to
interesting.
change.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's an interesting point. When you think about what you're doing at Co-Architects, now, of course, we're, as you mentioned, 155 or 160 people, and seven different areas that you're focused on, and all of those things. How many of your initiatives are big, huge, time-consuming, expensive initiatives, and how many are, maybe something more simple, something that an individual in the firm can or is doing, or something like that? I'm assuming there's a range there, but what does that look like?
Well, if I tell you that, Jeff, then you won't come to my
All
talk
right, fair enough.
next week.
Yeah, we don't want to give away too much.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I hope to share that during the talk, because there's some of our initiatives have quite a larger subcommittee, right? Other initiatives don't have any subcommittees because they're small call to actions, and so there is a wide range.
Yeah. Well, I still like the way that you're boiling it down. I think this is very actionable for, from 155 or 60 people to the sole practitioners. We've got a lot of folks in the community that are very happy being sole practitioners, which is a great thing. This is not something that's lost on somebody that owns and operates their own firms. I like the way that you're bringing it down, breaking it down to that level.
Yep.
So that's good. Are there programs out there? One that comes to mind, when you're talking about going to the schools, one that comes to my mind, and we last week on Context and Clarity Live, we talked with Carl Sergio out of Chicago about mentoring. And one thing he's been involved with, which I'm familiar with because they're very active in my kids' school, is the ACE mentorship program.
Yes.
But are there other programs out there? I mean, obviously including ACE and Project Pipeline through NOMA. Are there other programs out there that you're aware of that you would recommend that people could get involved in to basically
I
go to
would,
the schools?
I would really reach out to organizations like NOMA. NOMA has another program. Actually, we're just getting started with that has to do with mentorship. And so that's another one there. Like you, I'm familiar with ACE. The Southern Cal NOMA, the NOMA as a whole is a first step resource to start with for getting involved in the community. So I would suggest that as a resource to reach out for any kind of programs that has to do with mentoring or pipelines or just, reaching out to the community as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And here's, this may be the elephant in the room or the uncomfortable question, but what we're talking about is not just efforts by minorities, right? Non-minorities can and I would assume should get involved in these efforts, whether through NOMA or in some other way. Is that right?
Right, exactly. Not just minorities, but anybody can get involved. NOMA is not just for minority architects. I mean,
Right.
there are non-minority architects that are part of work with NOMA as well. So, yeah.
White. You mean white art? I mean, yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, we should.
We can just call. This is okay. We're just white architects.
Thank you for that, Katharine. Yes.
Yeah. Just in case it wasn't clear to anybody listening. Well, I would love to reach out to NOMA, and you think they would be okay with that if I did?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's reverse discrimination if they do, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a whole other podcast topic.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no, they're very, very will be very willing to work with white.
Okay, great.
One of the things that I like about this conversation, and really the conversations that we've been having all week, is that a lot of this to me, and of course, tell me if I'm wrong, but a lot of this is, using me as an example, is me getting outside of my bubble, understanding other points of view, other experiences, other challenges, certainly. And back to our question for Monday was about the sayings and the stereotypes. How does, if I say that, right, if I use that saying or perpetuate that stereotype or something like that, how does that make somebody else feel, right? What impact does, and probably, I'm just assuming some sort of hurtful impact. What impact does that have on them? Because that's what matters, right? It doesn't matter what I think about it. It matters what that impact is on them. And to me, this whole thing is this. Ultimately, I think the goal ought to be, it's got to be this learning process.
Exactly.
And so I love these kind of conversations.
Yeah.
I think that that is a good first step, Jeff, because I think a lot of people say, well, that doesn't mean anything, or that's not a bad thing that I said, or why should that be upsetting? Who cares if you don't understand it? That's the way that I feel. I mean, people bring that up a lot with using they as a pronoun. Like, that's just stupid. Like, it doesn't matter that you feel it's stupid. You just need to do what people ask you to do to make them, be able to be their full selves,
Exactly.
So I think that's the first, seems like that's a good message to be giving everybody we know, like our family members. That's one thing we can all do, at least, is try to mention it with our family members.
Exactly.
We have Thanksgiving coming up.
Yep.
And
getting people out of their comfort zones, right?
Right. Which they love to get out of their comfort zones at Thanksgiving, I've noticed. So
give them a little tryptophan and then push them outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Antoinette, this has been fun, really. I appreciate this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to next week. First of all, meeting you in person, which will be fantastic, and also hearing your message next week at the EntreArchitect annual meeting. So, thank you for taking time out to give us a little bit of a preview here.
Great. Thank you. And thank you both very much for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you via.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you live next week. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
To everybody else out there that's watching, either live, participating in this conversation, or watching, in the future, the recorded version of this, thank you. I say this every week, but thank you for making context and clarity a thing, because if it weren't for that, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't be having this really important conversation with Antoinette right now. So thank you for this opportunity to use this as a platform and to have these conversations. We appreciate all of you for that. My encouragement, as always, is please be well, stay safe, keep those around you safe and well. Find a little bit of time to breathe, relax, find a way to rejuvenate. We do this every day, so you've got to pace yourself. Thanks for going along this journey with us. It's a long one, it's a fun one, but it's taxing. So take care of yourself, and we will see you for our book club conversation tomorrow. And looking ahead to next week, we will be in Austin at this time next week. So I should announce this right now. Wednesday and Thursday of next week, Context and Clarity Live will take place 1 hour later than usual, because we'll be on Central Time. Wednesday, we'll have our Context and Clarity conversation, as we usually do. And then Thursday, Ryan Frederick will be our Context and Clarity Live guest. We'll talk about the power of place, and that'll be live from Austin. He will give the closing keynote, and then we'll do Context and Clarity Live right there on stage with him, involving the live audience, the live audience, and you, the live audience, on the internet audience. So that'll be a little bit of a change next week, but it will be, I think it'll be good. And Chris says no Clubhouse next week, right? That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
We'll figure that out.
Be 8 a.m. That would be 8 a.m. in Austin. That would be even easier, but we are having breakfast, I think, in the morning.
Yeah.
So
maybe we'll just open the mic right there at the breakfast table. We'll figure it out. We'll make an announcement about that.
All right.
So the whole Clubhouse gang may just be there in person. So we'll figure that out and let you know. All right. With that, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you. See you tomorrow for our discussion of Profit First by Mike McAllowitz. We will announce the November Context and Clarity Club book tomorrow at the end of that conversation. It may be inspired by today's conversation.
Will it be Paul Williams' biography? We don't know. Come back tomorrow.
It might be. All right. With that, everybody, appreciate you. Antoinette, thank you. Katharine, as always, thank you. And
good evening.
See you. Thanks, everybody.